All right, folks. Today we're honored to welcome Christian Espinosa to the Second Chance podcast. Christian is the founder of Blue Goat Cyber and a trailblazer in healthcare cybersecurity. His journey began with a life threatening health crisis that not only gave him a second chance, but also ignited his passion for securing medical devices and protecting patient lives. From leading innovative cybersecurity initiatives to writing transformative books, Christian's work blends personal resilience with professional excellence. And I'm excited to get to learn more about this. There's a lot of noise, Christian, that I see that's out there, but on just our security with our medical devices, things that you don't think about when you're going to the hospital and next thing you know, someone's hacked into your machine. So I'm excited to just learn more about your mission and how you help us take care of and secure that side of the world.
Yeah, my mission is to help make sure innovative medical technology makes it to the market. So we at Blue Goat Cyber work with medical device manufacturers to ensure their device is secure from hackers. This could be something like a surgical robot. It could be an implantable like a defibrillator or pacemaker or neurostimulator. It could be a in vitro diagnostic system, a drug infusion pump, pretty much any type of medical device technology we've worked on. And these technologies can help humanity, help save lives. So I think it's important that we make sure they're secure and get on the market and stay on the market.
No, I think you're right there. I worked in healthcare at a time when we didn't have any of that technology. I remember when we got our first intranet and how cool that was. That closed off system back in my day, you're talking probably 95-ish when we first got and I remember how fast that internet was inside of that intranet. It was like, holy wow. But like to now how we evolved into the security, but for yourself, your life-threatening health crisis was that pivotal moment that helped inspire your mission. How did that experience kind of shape or reshape your outlook and on personal and professional priorities?
Well, I had done 24 Ironman triathlons. I had just done like 120 burpees, and I felt this pain behind my left leg. And a friend of mine coaxed me to go to the hospital. She said I might have blood clots, and I was like, whatever. I'm fit. I'm young. I don't have blood clots, but I promised to go. I went to the hospital. I was diagnosed with 6 blood clots and told basically I might die or have a stroke. And told I couldn't do anything I wanted to do, or I couldn't run, I couldn't fly, I couldn't go for a hike. I just basically had to sit around on the couch and take blood thinners. So I went through a year of, I went through a couple months of feeling grateful for being alive. And then I went through probably 10 months of feeling caged and miserable and depressed because I couldn't do the things I wanted to do in my life.
Yeah.
So I decided to stop taking the blood thinners. I got every single blood test done on my blood. I got a Doppler ultrasound again on my leg and just decided to reclaim my health. So, in some regard, I was fortunate that I was alive, but I also wasn't living the way I wanted to be living. So then after that, I decided when I got my confidence back and made the decision to reclaim my health, I decided to form Blue Goat Cyber, my second cybersecurity business, and focus on medical devices because a medical device diagnosed me the blood clots, and if it wasn't for that device, I may not be here. If that device is hacked or compromised or taken off the market, I may not have made it. So that is our focus on medical devices.
Overlooked, I think. One of the bigger things, and there's a lot of noise that gets created, Christian, on electrical grids and um, different little areas of our life. But these devices also come with their own vulnerabilities. What do you see are the biggest challenges in ensuring their safety, and how does the industry address them?
Right now, they're starting to be addressed because it's been mandated by the FDA in the United States that these devices are cyber secure. So because of that, there is a risk assessment has to be done. There has to be testing by a third party. So that mandate is helping. Unfortunately, in cybersecurity, unless there's a mandate, people won't do it.
Yeah.
So now we're making progress. A device cannot make it on the market unless it meets a big checklist of cybersecurity items, and that's what we help manufacturers with. Is that list of items that the FDA or regulatory authority is looking for.
You do that like through a 7-step secure methodology, I think I was reading about. Can you explain that to us, or is that, did I read that correctly?
That 7 step secure methodology is from my first book. It's about bringing emotional intelligence back into
Ah,
high tech industries or high IQ industries. So that's kind of on the back end of like I want my team to have emotional intelligence.
yeah.
So when they interact with a client, they don't talk over the client's head. They understand the world the client is the lens the client is seeing the world through. They collaborate well together. They have emotional intelligence. So that's important that my team isn't transactional. They actually care and want to build a relationship with the client.
Take us there for a minute. I've done some content on emotional intelligence. Explain to our audience, and we're going to pause on the cybersecurity side, and we're going to look into your teams. Explain that to our audience. Explain what that is and how that you was able to incorporate that in your business and why. Like why that's super important.
Well, with my first cybersecurity business, 99% of my problems were because my staff lacked emotional intelligence, not because
Mm.
my staff lacked technical skills. So I worked to solve that problem in my company to add that emotional intelligence to my already high, rationally intelligent staff. And and what that does is it makes you a better communicator, it makes you a better human, and it makes you able to communicate better with clients and your spouse, your children, anyone in your life. So I have those 7 steps which I wrote about in the book, which are things that worked in my company, uh, and that's why I wrote those things. And my company, after I added that emotional intelligence, our revenue went up. Clients went from like one-off projects to recurring clients. My team collaborated better together, and I had to like get rid of some people because I didn't want to change and do a lot to enforce that culture. But it really helped a lot, and it's something that I had to develop more myself and transform as well as a leader. You have to have I think you should have emotional intelligence. At least I do, because it helps you become a better leader when you can understand what somebody is going through on your team and the lens they see the world through and how you can facilitate or empower them getting to the next level, or how you can help them feel safe in an environment so they can communicate openly with you.
Do you have you ever used DISC as a tool inside of
Yes.
your? Yeah. That's something I teach, and I help people, I help businesses. I facilitate disc sessions. I use Take Flight Learning as mine. It's all bird oriented, so it really speaks in a basic type level. That's what I was going to ask you is when you get into emotional intelligence and disc and things like that, in just client communications, it sounds like everybody's very technical. Um, but is there still that gap where all of y'all, it's very industry term and you're trying to explain it to these folks over here that may not explain, understand? Or how does that work as far as when you get into the emotional intelligence side of the communication and all those things? Is everybody kind of in your industry kind of operating on that same technical level?
Well, my industry, cybersecurity, is a support industry. If it wasn't for other industries, there would be no need.
Right.
And unfortunately, in my industry, it attracts people that want to be, quote, smarter than other people. That's how they feel significant. And your ego wants to protect this identity you build for yourself. So if you want to be smarter than other people because that's what makes you feel significant, you're going to talk over their head. So
Right.
if I'm a cybersecurity professional, I'm talking to a healthcare provider about how to secure their environment, and I talk over their head, it makes me feel smart. My ego says, "Oh, they don't understand you. You must be smarter than them," which is the has the opposite effect we need, right? We want to make sure they understand what we're talking about so they can actually implement the changes to become more secure. But I've noticed in 30 years in cybersecurity, this is like a pandemic in my industry, and people don't want to change. Like one of the things I talk about is communication, and I talk about neurolinguistic programming. With communication, there's a NLP presupposition that says the meaning of communication is the response you get. So what that does is shifts the ownership back to you. If you're not getting the budget, your spouse is getting upset, whatever's going on, it shifts the ownership back to you to change how you communicate. Most of us don't do that though. We blame the other person. We say, "Oh, they just don't understand what I'm talking about. Oh, they just get upset easily. Oh, they're overly emotional." But it should be on us to alter how we communicate.
You touched on um, how that incorporates into cybersecurity, but you also like to talk about, and you mentioned some of the most significant factors that are facing cybersecurity and some things that need to be aware. And we often we look at the very technical side of secure the grid, but little things like that and how it plays into just the execution of your cybersecurity plan. What's some other things that you see that folks aren't aware of, and how all this kind of plays in together, and just cybersecurity in general?
I think one of the challenges is cybersecurity professionals tend to overly complicate things.
There you go. That's it.
So,
Yeah.
if I'm a small business with 8 people, I probably don't need to do everything from a cybersecurity perspective on a 100 point checklist. I can probably
Yeah.
do 4 and maybe do the rest later on as I grow. But cybersecurity professionals are not good at communicating this, and as a small business owner, it's overwhelming because there's so much disinformation and misinformation out there about cybersecurity. So many people preaching that buy this product, it'll solve all your issues. So it's a challenge. But as a business owner, especially today, I think people need to understand like I need to take ownership of understanding a little bit about cybersecurity as if I'm a business owner, just like I have to understand sales and marketing and accounting. This one more thing I got to understand, at least enough to make informed decisions.
I think you're spot on with that, and I work with a lot of businesses to where even Christian, you drill it down to just basic SEO, and the gap is they don't understand the terms. So I'll come along and educate a team on just terms, all the other things, just so they can have the conversation. So similar stuff with you is when I was in a spot the other day. They got some pretty cool some cutting edge stuff, and the guys like I was like, what kind of network you're operating on? And he's using a home modem and all, all the things. And I was like, let's pause here. So we brought in, and so I was like, this is what you need. So just in the layman's, just me being able to explain. So when the other guy got there, who's a friend of mine, that I end up connecting with, the way he explains it's very, very basic. So the business owner understands, what they're getting, why they're buying it, the importance of it, and not all the technical stuff. So sometimes there has to be a communicator that stands in between you all on the very technical side and then the business owner over here. It sounds like you do a good job of helping cultivate that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, I'm an advocate for not always having to have that proxy between, right? Like the technical person, and then somebody has to proxy the information to talk to the business owner. I
Yeah.
think the technical person often, if they adopt some emotional intelligence, their life will improve, not just like in business, but if they're having like communication challenges at work, they're probably having them in their home life as well.
Yeah.
So I think these are skills that I like to say have an infinite shelf life versus like technical skills, which have a finite shelf life.
It's a great way of putting it, man. I like that. You also talk about the importance of embracing discomfort and adaptability to foster growth. What is some examples that you have done yourself that's allowed you to step outside of your comfort zone that's helped you in your career or personal life?
Well, I do a lot of uh, difficult things. I've done like the Ironman triathlon and climb mountains, and I do endurance events. I think that builds resilience, and it makes you understand like it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like in Ironman triathlons, I've been on the side of the road, like the run course, like in a fetal position, like throwing up before. But I developed the courage to get up and take one step, and then eventually start running again. So in business, I have to get used to being uncomfortable because what got you to where you are today is not going to get you to the next level. So if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, you're going to stay at that level you're at. And in life, if you're not willing to be uncomfortable or take a step in a different direction that you're not used to, you're going to get what you've always got. You're not going to get any more. So we need to learn to embrace that discomfort in order to become more so we can attract more and to build more resilience. I think it's a skill that has dwindled in our humanity for some reason. People have gotten too comfortable, and they're afraid to. Once you're in that comfort zone for too long, it becomes more difficult to get out of it. So I always try to do something, uh, you know, several times a year, several times a month, uh, to force me to be a little bit uncomfortable. So I don't get used to being comfortable.
I'm 100% with you on that. I think for every time I've avoided discomfort and lived in comfort, life came along and figured out how it was going to make it uncomfortable for me. So, I tell I have that saying, and it came from someone else of choosing your heart, or your heart will choose you. So embracing some of those things, and you started kind of as a solopreneur too, right? And then you evolved as this single person operation into the team you have today. What is the complexities? What did you experience of that growth, and where did you feel like you struggled as you were starting to build your first team?
Well, solopreneur work was very easy at first. Uh, I mean, it was a little bit challenging when I first started because I had to figure out how to get clients, how to bill people, and all that. But once I started doing it, it became very easy. I was making a lot of money, taking a fair amount of time off each year, but I got kind of bored with it. I thought, I'm not growing. I got too comfortable. I'm not growing. I'm not contributing. So I thought, what can I do to grow and contribute? So I thought I can start a company. So I started a company and started hiring people and realized, I made a bunch of hiring mistakes. I didn't understand my target audience. I made pretty much every mistake you can make in my first company. And I was very uncomfortable. I remember like one time I couldn't even make payroll. I was like literally like in the floor of my basement, like crying, thinking, man, I'm gonna have to fire people or what am I gonna do? It might be over. All this money invested in my company. But through those challenges, I had to figure things out. I had to become more resourceful. I had to get used to being uncomfortable. Uh, and I had to really embrace a culture in my company and get rid of people that didn't fit the culture and then
Mm.
hire people that fit the culture.
That's big, right? Like here, folks. I mean, what he just said, it sounded like it was probably one of the easiest things Christian's ever done, and that's probably one of the harder ones. Is getting having to free up people's future so you can redefine and refocus on your culture. That's a task. Um, in itself, and just trying to get the right people off the boat and the right people on the boat,
Mhm.
so you can continue moving forward. Um, Man, that's a really great way. But you ended up selling that company, didn't you? Did you? Is that you started that one? And is that the one you sold or had?
Yeah, I started that company, Alpine Security, in 2014 and sold it in 2020. And it was hard. Like you're talking about letting people go. That's not
Yeah.
easy as a leader. It's not easy for me. But I remember having a conversation with someone. He wanted to be a leader in my company. He wanted to be the COO. Uh, and I had a conversation with him about the things he needed to change to be part of that, to be qualified for that role. And he got defensive and said, "So you're asking me to change who I am?" And I thought about it and I said, "Yes, because who you are is not going to serve you or my company or my organization in that role." And after that, he quit. He couldn't handle changing who he was. He thought that he should just be given a role. So yeah, I had to. I didn't fire that person. They quit on their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was to enforce that culture and really go through that process is not an easy thing to do.
No. And the other thing you see there is, had you not had a little bit of experience on your end, you would have promoted that person, and then dealt with the repercussions of a thing. Um, it's a transition that I try to work with people to take. One of my friends calls it grunt work. He's like, I'm done doing grunt work. And I'm like, well, in order to make this transition into leadership, I need to you need to learn how leaders talk. And we're in kind of an inroads right now of, I had sent him some books. I'm like, hey, here's some reading material that can help change your perspective, because it's hard to, when you're doing grunt work, you're very self-focused, and when you're doing
Right.
leadership, you're very people-focused. And I'm trying to work with him on just changing his approach and his outlook and similar type things, so he doesn't walk in and potentially get hired for a position just because of his past credentials, and then not be able to do the job because he lacks that side of it. Which your challenge for that past employee, that was a really good challenge.
Yeah, I had to come to terms with because I'm a big believer in ownership, and I used to think, how come I can't get through this person? How come, like, what am I not communicating properly? Because I talked about communication earlier. How is the message not landing? How come this person doesn't want? They want this role, but they don't want to take this course on leadership. They don't want to improve their emotional intelligence. Like,
Yeah.
what are they not understanding, and how am I not communicating properly enough? But I had to realize a lot of people want things, but they're not willing to do the work to get it. And that's just the bottom line, really.
Yeah, I think so. Or they think they already got it. They don't see it from through your lens. I was the
That's
same way.
true.
I can't say that I was any different, because you think you got it all together, or stand on the outside watching people go and do. And I remember interviewing one time and about all the things that I could do, and it was for leadership. And the lady said, "Jeff, you've done a great job telling me about all the things you can accomplish here, but how are you going to help my team accomplish it?"
Mm.
And when she said that, like, it went in one ear and out the other. I didn't get the job, but it to this day, it was almost it's probably 15, 16 years ago. But to this day, I remember it, because I remember her saying that. And then um, it seemed like a week later, after I didn't get the job, the book that I needed to that would have helped me with that conversation like landed in my life, and I was like, where was this book 2 weeks ago? I really could have used this, but it was like someone's like, hey, you need to, here's a book, or it showed up on my email list or whatever. And I was like, wait a minute, I needed this. Um, what was going back to your first business, what was kind of lessons you learned in starting that and then selling it? What was you have any key takeaways for anyone, or I wish I could do overs, or any moments like that in selling that first business?
Yeah, with starting the business, I thought everybody needs cybersecurity, so I tried to sell cybersecurity to everybody, which
Mm,
didn't work. I had a watered down message that didn't land with anybody. That's one big mistake. The other mistake is I hired people based on their technical skills, their degree, and their certifications, not cultural fit or core value alignment. So I had to fix both of those challenges in order for the company to be successful, which you know was uncomfortable, but it's what I had to do. When there's necessity, often we're forced to change. And then selling the company, I made mistakes there too. I sold it for mainly stock to the parent company that bought mine. The parent company was going to go public and all this stuff. And while I was working for the parent company, I could never ever sell the stock. There's always like this BS blackout period. So when I finally quit the company, I the stock was like at $5, and I could only sell so many shares a day, and the stock went down to like 8 cents so
Mm.
very quickly. So all the money I thought I had, you calculate this many shares at $5 is a lot different than this many shares at 8 cents, right?
Yeah.
So all that money, not all of it, I still was sold some, but most of it evaporated.
Did
So
it was it because you were exiting? Is that what caused the dip in the stock, or is it just the market?
it was lack of a vision and I think poor leadership.
Yeah, well, that's a we hear that a lot, right? It's poor leadership's a problem, and leadership's a problem, and it's always a solution.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the way that we frame that. You had a note on some of your notes there, just about one of the a difficult. What's the most difficult thing you overcame? And when I saw that, I was like, all right, I got to hear this. Um, just for the sake of a second chance, right? What do you feel like is one of the most difficult things you've overcame?
I would say the blood clots
Yeah,
I briefly spoke about uh, for a couple of things. One, the whole situation from the beginning to me reclaiming my life was very odd and depressing. And when I first heard of the blood clots, the doctor, and I wrote about this in my second book, the doctor wasn't very empathetic. He said I had blood clots. I asked him what it meant. He said I could die or have a stroke any minute. I was there by myself at the hospital. My nearest family member was in Denver. I was in St. Louis. And when you hear like your life might be over, at least for me, all these images go through my head. Like, man, did I live a good life? Did I take risks? Did I ultimately matter? Right? And I started freaking out and crying. And the doctor said, in a very like weird way, he's like in a dismissive way. He said, "Oh, don't worry. I see this all the time." And I immediately snapped out of my silently crying state and said, "You know what? I don't see this all the time. This is a first for me." And that's how like this blood clot journey went for me. And they gave me blood thinners. Uh, I mentioned I was working for the parent company. I later quit the parent company. I couldn't get insurance because I now had a pre-existing condition.
yeah,
So I was paying like $700 a month for these blood thinners, which were made by the same company that made the COVID vaccine I got, which I think was a contributing factor to the blood clots, ironically. And like I said, I was told I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. I couldn't run, couldn't hike, couldn't do anything but sit on the couch and watch, Yellowstone or whatever, reruns of Yellowstone. So yeah, my whole life was horrible, and I my confidence went out the window. I gained weight, and I just didn't do anything that I wanted to do. So I went from grateful for being alive to feeling caged pretty quickly. And one day I was looking at the bottle of blood thinners, and I'm like, screw it, and threw them across the room. I'm like, I'm not taking these anymore. I'm gonna like figure out my own life on my own terms because I realize nobody cares about my life more than I do. The doctors, I'll take their advice, but they're not going to be in charge of my life.
right.
And that's when I reclaimed my life and got the blood test every single. I literally checked every box for every test of my blood possible. I had to give out like 4 vials of blood when I went to the doctor or the lab, and there was nothing in my blood that said I had a root cause for the clots, which led me to believe I wouldn't get clots again. Uh, but yeah, once I made that decision, it gave me the confidence to start Blue Goat Cyber, to move forward with my relationship. It's like everything just sort of like you know came clear again that these are the steps I need to do in my life. I went through this time of fog to like reclaiming my life with clarity, but that transition was very difficult for me.
there's folks that are out that are experiencing something similar. It may not be quite medical, right? To that extent, um, that we're speaking to right now, right? And I think there's a lot of power in what you just said there, in that I wanted to reclaim my life, and I wanted to be in control of that. And so often we give that away. We give it to the doctor, or we take that at face value. Um, Man, that's such a that's a lot of power that you gave yourself.
Well, we all have agency or power over our lives. We just have to exercise it. It's
Yeah,
sometimes hard to realize that, but for at least for me, I'd rather die doing the things I want to do than living a life that I'm just existing. Uh, and I look at life through the lens of like my deathbed. If I'm on my deathbed and I ask myself, do I have regrets? I want the answer to always be no.
yeah.
And the answer is no now. Then the answer was yes when I was in that state for like a year on the blood thinners and doing nothing that I wanted to do.
You've I wanted to ask you this because you're very technical. What was you when you was a little kid? What was you gonna be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
There you go.
That's why I joined the Air Force. And then right before I graduated, they cut all the pilot slots.
We got him signed up now. Let's cut the slots.
That's kind of
Uh,
how it felt. Yeah. I was like, well, crap. I guess I'll do communications, which
yeah,
led into cybersecurity.
I was gonna say, which led you into where you are now. So, because you're like, I love asking the folks that are technical, because when you see kids, right, you might see a kid playing on a tablet or an iPad or whatever, but very seldom do you hear that kid be like, "Oh no, I'm making my way into cybersecurity, big guy." Um,
Right.
Right? So I always like to ask my tech friends, of like, as they get very, sometimes especially when they get technical in my conversations like this, and that's kind of my bring you back to where I can understand. It's like, what is you gonna be? And it's never I was going. No, I knew I was gonna do this forever. Um, that's
Yeah,
too crazy.
I didn't want to become a geek as a kid. I don't think that was on the radar. Yeah.
Um, Man, I tell you, I appreciate you talking with me, and you hear that second chance inside of your brush with death, and that's kind of like what that is, right? And you have this moment, you're challenging yourselves and all these things, but you have this, and it really, that moment in time. And I just heard you just unpacked it for me, man, and I felt it, where you found that clarity of like, I want to go and do and make a difference, and I want to make my days harder than easy. And it's really neat to hear that come out as we're talking and kind of just talking tech and your business and all that stuff. And when you really get down to what drives you, man, I heard it. It was really neat to just to hear that come out when you start talking about reclaiming your life back. What's that piece of advice as we're wrapping up here, where you've got someone who's floundering around or whatever, but what message do you want to give to those folks that are seeking their own meaningful change?
I think the message is to find some clarity on what you want in life. I think most people know what they don't want, so we end up getting what we focus on, and most people don't know what they want. So if you know what you want with clarity, like if you want to move to a different city, make it happen. Start taking the steps. And you might realize, I don't want to move from California to New York. I want to move to Florida, whatever. You might change it a little bit, but if as long as you have that clarity, it makes the steps easier to take, because we don't have clarity. This is my experience in life. We don't have clarity on what you want. You end up like getting what you get. You kind of flounder. When you have clarity, like in the type of relationship you want, I want to have a passionate, adventurous relationship that evolves and we get closer together. If you have that intentionality and that clarity, you're going to take action to make that happen. If you want to have a life that allows you to travel, then you'll find ways to do that. But a lot of us want something more in life, but we don't define it with clarity. And from my experience, if you don't have that clarity or don't take this, you're not going to take the step, and your life is never going to change.
What did I miss, Christian? Anything else we need to that you'd like to get out for the for your listeners?
I think we're all capable, much more capable than we think we are, and much more resilient and resourceful. We tend to forget that, though. I think indoctrination through our school, our jobs, whatever. As children, we're very resourceful. We could figure things out, but as adults, we've like learned to think we're not as capable as we are. So it's important to like unlearn that and realize. And there's lots of stories of this that everyone is much more capable than they think they are. They just have to like tune into themselves and find that fire, that passion, of what they really want to do.
My first guest and I today. This is my fourth episode. I got stacked up today. Um, but my first guest talked about the power of positive self-talk. And
Mm-hmm.
we overlook it, man. And you like that's the cool part when I sometimes when I stack up my days with random folks that I'm excited to meet, like yourself, for whatever weird reason. A lot of the themes all roll into the same thing. So that's one of the things he said, and I wanted to kind of point that out for everyone as well. Is when you're don't take for granted that you got to be your own number one fan and that it's okay to pull for yourself and love yourself and like yourself. And that was some of the points he brought out is like how we struggle sometimes to, he goes, he put it very bluntly. He goes, I didn't like myself. I didn't know how to like myself. And so he was very abusive to himself. And,
Yeah.
so I think what you just echoed, kind of my first conversation the other day, and I'm wrapping up with you today on my recording, but you echoed exactly what he said, man. It's really neat from my side of it. You didn't get to hear all that, but for me to watch it all wrapped together, right? Of it's neat, man. I don't I would love to find some time to where we can help amplify your business and maybe we can at some point in time to where we can talk about these things that get overlooked and how we can do that. And then I think we brushed on the topics of just how good you are at building your teams from the lessons you learned. So hopefully you and I, Christian, can get back together as you evolve in your roles, and you and I can continue the conversation toward leadership as well. So,
Yeah.
okay, thank you enough for being here, man.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Jeff.
All right, have a good day.
All right. You too.